this edition of the Government News Brief for Tuesday, November 8, 2016. In the news, gold production set to surpass projected target, government exploring alternative measures to reduce prison overcrowding, and the Ministry of Social Protection is partnering to better protect young girls in 2017. Stay tuned for the details. Thank you for staying with us. I am Renetta LaFleur, and now for the details. Guyana's gold production is set to surpass the projected target by more than 50,000 ounces. More in this report from Paul McAdam.
A record gold production has been projected for 2016, according to Minister of Natural Resources Raphael Trotman. This was announced during the last parliamentary sitting on November 4.
Gold, for example, in 2014, 385,000 ounces. That is under the previous administration. In 2015, we took it to 456. And in this year, we'll take it to over 600,000. That is our promise.
The minister explained that the amount of gold expected is being fueled by the efforts of small miners. A total of 545,742 ounces have been declared thus far, up to the end of October.
And that target will be met by the average man and woman involved in mining, and it will be supplemented. That effort will be supplemented by the larger companies, and we are grateful to them.
The remainder of the production thus far has been contributed by two of the large gold mining companies, Guyana Goldfields and Troy Mining Resources Company. The combined amount by the two was reported to be 125,065 ounces and 58,750 ounces respectively. The previous highest gold production figure was in 2015 at 456,000 ounces, surpassing the 2014 production of 385,000 ounces. Paul McAdam for the Government News Brief.
Alternative sentencing is being explored to help reduce overcrowding in prisons. Tiffany Rodius has more.
The Ministry of Legal Affairs is currently engaging the Inter-American Development Bank, IDB, on determining forms of alternative sentencing and granting pre-trial liberties for inmates, Minister and Attorney General Basil Williams says.
Well, it's something still in the pipeline.
Alternative sentencing, Minister Williams says, is another measure being considered to reduce overcrowding in the prisons.
So the whole idea is to try to weed out these offenses that are clogging up. So sometimes some people who are there for 6 months, who could get a 6-month sentence, could have had some other sentence.
Recently, the government took a decision to institute night courts to reduce the number of backlog cases in the judicial system. For the Government News Brief, I'm Tiffany Rogers.
The Ministry of Social Protection is partnering to establish a committee aimed at protecting young girls. Find out how from Zanil Williams.
Minister of Social Protection, Walter Lawrence, explains that following the recent high-level meeting on adolescent girls and teenagers, her ministry is awaiting a report to establish the committee to respond to challenges young girls face.
But on the conclusion of that report, that we will be able to set up a committee so that our approach to addressing our adolescents and our girls in particular will be a holistic one. Because we recognize that from the Ministry of Social side, that we have to ensure that we have strong families who can take care of their children, who can be able to go out to work knowing that their children are safe.
Minister Lawrence says the team will create a well-designed plan for children. The Social Protection Ministry will partner with non-governmental organizations and relevant ministries to address these challenges.
You have the Ministry of Education, which also plays a pivotal role to ensure that the girl child and our adolescents, that they receive an education that is second to none. And then we have the Ministry of Health, providing safe spaces and spaces whereby young people can feel free to go and have their checkups. And so we want to ensure that we can approach it in a holistic way, not to forget that we did have the Ministry of Communities represented there, and the Ministry of Indigenous Affairs.
The minister notes that staff capacity of the Child Protection Agency has been increased. This is to ensure that there is an adequate number of officers in communities to address the various challenges young girls are facing. She adds that efforts are also in place to establish the Early Childhood Development Unit. This unit will work with daycare centers to ensure that children are in a safe and healthy environment. I am Sunil Williams for the Government News Brief.
The Durban Park area's rehabilitation has been criticized by the political opposition, but it was the very administration that started, then abandoned efforts to do just that. Here is more in this report.
Prime Minister Moses Nagamootoo dismissed what he described as an attempt to pillory government's Durban Park rehabilitation efforts. These claims were made by the parliamentary opposition during the last sitting of the National Assembly on November 4. The Prime Minister noted that the opposition leader, Dr. Bharat Jagdeo, who described the Durban Park project as a malodorous contract, had launched an effort to rehabilitate the area some 10 years ago.
Minister of Infrastructure cited a figure of $138 million in 2007 to 2009 that had been spent on Durban Park by the government of the then leader of the opposition, then Prime Minister. But that's not President, but that's not what I'm saying this for. We are pilloried for spending money on Durban Park.
He cited a Chronicle newspaper article dated October 20, 2005.
President checks on Durban Park complex progress. That leader of the opposition stood up here to talk about waste. And this article says, contractor Mr. Rameshwar Ramchan yesterday promised President Bharat Jagdeo that phase 1 of the Durban Park development project in Georgetown will be completed by the end of next month. President Jagdeo, after inspecting the site on a brief visit yesterday afternoon, urged that work be done around the clock to ensure that the deadline is reached.
He added that the article went on to describe the land filling east of the site of the 1763 monument that was being done at an estimated cost of $45 million. It added that once completed, the 1,620-acre sports complex would have a track and field and cycling areas, 4 tennis courts, parking space for 195 vehicles, food stalls, and an administrative center.
Here was the leader of the opposition, then president, who had this grand idea of this Durban Park project. It was good in his time. Suddenly, it becomes a waste in our time. You cannot place any weight on the credibility of such pronouncement, much less the type of leadership that pronouncement is coming from.
The Prime Minister noted that the aforementioned $45 million was taken from the Ghana Lotto Fund, but was never accounted for. When questioned at a later date, the then head of the Presidential Secretariat, Dr. Roger Luncheon, said that a decision had been taken to let the area become a pristine green jungle or green zone. The Durban Park area has since been cleared and declared a recreational space by government. It has since been used for several events, including the Jubilee flag-raising ceremony, Mashramani, and other activities. Paul McAdam for the Government News Brief.
A survey is being planned to determine the types of land and housing issues existing in Region 2 before these issues are addressed. Details in this report from Delicia Haynes.
A number of complaints and issues have been brought to the attention of Minister within the Ministry of Communities, Valerie Adams-Patterson. She says that her ministry, along with other land titling agencies, would carry out surveys before legally addressing these issues.
Some of the lands in this country, or most of it, is owned by Guyana Lands and Civil. Not every piece of land, even if you see a house on it, is owned by housing. So before we can intervene, we have to first establish who owns. We have lands owned by Gaisuko. We have lands owned by the state.
Minister Adams-Patterson, who recently visited Lima Sands, Essequibo Region 2, told residents that the ministry is aware of the issues that affect persons trying to acquire land. Some of these included squatting and overcrowding.
I know that there are issues here. There are issues of squatting. There are issues of persons owning more than one house lot, and some still waiting to have one, we're going to deal with these issues. With the help of you and your officers, your senior officers and so on in this region, we are going to deal with the issues.
While in Region 2, Minister Adams Patterson awarded 12 home improvement subsidies and held public consultations for the change in age to apply for house lots. The minister has several other public consultations planned for communities across Guyana. For the Government News Brief, I am Delicia Haynes.
We have come to the end of today's edition of the Government News Brief. The details of these and other stories can be found on GNews website. You can subscribe to our website and YouTube channel, and you can also like us and follow us on Facebook and be updated as the news unfolds. Do join us again tomorrow for another edition of the Government News Brief. I am Renetta LaFleur. Thank you for watching.